Did you ever find out who did it?
Yeah, I knew who did it shortly after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they are now where?
Oh, the guy who actually shot me is dead.
You've been shot. How many times have you been shot?
9 times.
9 times.
Yeah, it was only one situation though. It was one.
Well, yeah.
I thought I heard my mother call my name.
We all know the infamous story. 50 Cent was shot 9 times outside his grandma's house in Queens back in 2000. It was savage, but somehow he survived.
Turned out it was my grandma. That's what saved my life.
I told you.
What a lot of people don't talk about, though, is what happened after. The guy who pulled the trigger didn't just disappear into the streets. He got just 21 days later. Now that's where things get really interesting.
In the verse, he said, in the Bible, it says what goes around comes around. Hamo shot me. 3 weeks later, he got shot down. Now it's clear that I'm here for a real reason because he got hit like I got hit, but he ain't breathing.
There's been some serious speculation about why this happened. Was it just street justice, or was there something way bigger behind it? People are buzzing about how 50 Cent was already making waves in the industry, exposing things in his music that not everyone was happy about.
It never happens on your time, like when you think you're ready, like it's supposed to happen. It always happens when it's supposed to happen.
From shady label deals to talking about corruption in the streets, 50 wasn't exactly playing by the rules. In the music industry, they've got their own ways of handling people who go against the grain. Was someone trying to silence him, or was it just retaliation from another side of the game?
And I've seen Tupac and Biggie Small situation where all their wounds were inflicted in areas that would have prevented their death if they had.
Yeah.
And then there's this rumor that the guy who shot him had some shady connections with Mike Tyson. Yeah, Tyson, the same heavyweight champ who was moving in some questionable circles back then. Could Tyson have been involved in some way, or was his name just thrown in the mix to stir things up even more?
I dedicate this fight to my brother, Darabon, who died.
50's reaction to all this has been intense. He's never shied away from the fact that his life was on the line, and that surviving that day changed everything for him. Now, with the shooter dead and those suspicious ties lingering, people are still wondering, was this just the streets handling their own, or did the industry have a hand in wiping the slate clean? Either way, this story's full of layers, and 50's perspective is one you don't want to miss. It was May 24th, 2000, and 50 Cent was just chilling outside his grandma's house in South Jamaica, Queens. Sounds like a regular day, right? Well, not for long. Out of nowhere, a car rolled up and suddenly, bam, someone inside started firing. We're talking 9 shots fired at him, hitting him in the hand, arm, hip, legs, chest, and even his face. It was brutal. He was rushed to the hospital in critical condition, and things were touch and go. He had to undergo a bunch of surgeries just to stay alive. The news spread like wildfire. According to 50, this whole ordeal was a major wake-up call. Well, if you survive 9 bullets, you start rethinking your life, right? He's said over and over that this was the moment he realized just how lucky he was to be alive and that he needed to do something big with his second chance. Now, why did this even happen? That's where things get juicy. No one really knows for sure. Some say it had to do with his past ties to the trade, while others think it was a personal beef that got way out of hand. 50 has always maintained that the guy who shot him was a low-level dealer who, get this, ended up getting just 3 weeks later.
Did you ever find out who did it?
Yeah, I knew who did it shortly after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they are now where?
Oh, the guy who actually shot me is dead.
But here's where the plot thickens. Court testimony later dropped some bombshells. Apparently, a 3-person hit squad was sent after 50 Cent because of a song he wrote that took shots, pun intended, at Kingpin Kenneth Supreme McGriff. Can you believe it? According to John Reagan, one of Supreme's guys, after the shooting went down, McGriff and 2 other gang members linked up, and McGriff basically bragged, saying, "I got him." To really grasp how this all unraveled, we need to rewind to the early 1980s. That's when Supreme founded the infamous Supreme team in the Jamaican neighborhood of Queens. Under his ruthless leadership, the gang exploded in size, with hundreds of members, and took over the crack trade in the Basley Park houses where Supreme himself grew up. The money, insane. They were pulling in a jaw-dropping $200,000 a day. But then in 1987, Supreme's reign hit a snag when he was sentenced to 12 years in prison. He got out on parole in 1994, but surprise, surprise, by the end of that same year, he was back behind bars. It wasn't until 1997 that he finally managed to get his convictions cleared and started what he probably thought was a fresh new chapter in his life. Little did he know, though, his past was about to catch up with him in a big way. So after After Supreme got out, he started rolling with Ja Rule and the crew over at Inc. Records. He wasn't just any guy in the background either. He became a major player, providing protection to the label's artists. At this point, 50 Cent and Supreme were still on decent terms, but 50's career was struggling. He wasn't the star we know today, and he was nowhere near Ja Rule's level of fame. Things weren't looking great for 50, so what did he do? He decided to diss the entire rap industry with his track How to Rob. It was a bold move to grab attention, stir the pot, and hopefully sell a few records. But then came the notorious beef with Ja Rule. According to 50, it all started when his friend Troy robbed Ja Rule. Later, when 50 and Ja crossed paths at a club, 50 tried to squash any bad blood, but Ja thought 50 was somehow involved in the robbery, and things spiraled from there. Ja later admitted that the robbery did happen, but he denied ever seeing 50 with the guy who did it. Either way, the beef was officially on, and it was about to get messy.
But it had nothing to do with him. Like, I didn't even know you know this dude. You know what I'm saying? His story is, I seen him with Troy out and about, and I got mad at him.
Supreme eventually stepped in, telling 50 to lay off Ja Rule. Now, because Supreme was someone 50 actually respected, he agreed. Well, kind of. Even though he promised to chill, 50 couldn't resist and kept throwing jabs at Ja Rule, especially with his track Your Life's on the Line. He did cut out a few lines where he called Ja a studio gangster who needed Supreme's help to get his chain back, but that was more out of respect for Supreme than Ja Rule. Still, the tension was far from over, and 50 wasn't about to back down completely.
I don't believe you murder. Fuck around and leave you murder.
In 1999, a tragic event shook both Supreme and 50 Cent, the death of their mutual friend Black Just. Here's how the story goes. Rapper E Moneybags wanted to buy a car from Supreme and had already put down a deposit. But when E Moneybags asked for his money back, Supreme just laughed and told him to forget about it. Things escalated, and one day E Moneybags opened fire on Supreme while he was riding in a car with Black Just. Tragically, Black Just got hit twice, including once in the thigh. Instead of rushing straight to the hospital, which was nearby, Supreme went back to the hood and asked someone else to take Black Just to the hospital. This delay proved fatal, and Black Just didn't make it, turning E Moneybags into a major target with some serious enemies.
Just like that. He said that wasn't for Just. Now let's look at him, man, and I say, E, that is Just. He's dead.
So, the beef between 50 Cent and Ja Rule never really cooled off. Supreme was always in Ja's corner, trying to get 50 to chill out and stop the disses. But here's the thing, 50 wasn't exactly thrilled that Supreme kept siding with Ja. Plus, Supreme didn't really see 50 as a future superstar at the time. Why bother changing things up when you're already making good money from a well-established star like Ja Rule, right? From Supreme's perspective, it made more sense to back Ja, which only fueled the fire between 50 and Ja even more.
I'll tell you personally, the people that you see like Irv, Ja, the people that are involved in the business aspect are like these don't got no hood in them.
Things really escalated when 50 Cent and Ja Rule ended up performing at the same club and, surprise surprise, got into a full-on brawl. In the chaos, 50 walked away with Ja Rule's chain, which he later flaunted in the music video for Your Life's on the Line. Naturally, Ja ran straight to Supreme for help in getting his chain back, again. But this time, instead of just handing it over, 50 played it smart and managed to get a watch in return for Ja's precious chain.
That's why they write about bricks and only dealt with dimes. Leave it to them, and they say they got a fast card.
Supreme was getting seriously fed up with 50 Cent by this point. 50 was messing with Ja Rule's image, and for the second time, Supreme had to step in and clean up the mess. Meanwhile, 50 was laser focused on bringing down Inc., and his relationship with Supreme kept getting. In an interview with XXL, 50 shared a wild story about hearing that Ja Rule was filming in the Coliseum area. Naturally, 50 decided to pay him a little visit, packing a pistol and riding his motorbike over there. When he showed up though, he ran right into Supreme. Supreme told 50, "Hey, come here, don't even do it, I see you." He pulled 50 aside and said, "Yo, what's up with this dude?" P Supreme just told him to leave Ja Rule alone, saying, Nah, I told you to leave them alone, man. You know they ain't gonna do nothing." Tony Yo also recounted a moment when their relationship was falling apart. In one of their encounters, 50 made it crystal clear to Supreme that he wasn't scared of him. It was like 50 was daring Supreme to bring it on, showing that he wasn't backing down despite the growing tension.
I remember Preem coming to the block one day and try to like sun 50 and rub his head.
You know what 50 did? Yeah, my
Do it back,
That was the day I know Preem didn't like 50.
To make things even more intense, 50 Cent started hanging out with a crew that had serious beef with Supreme, including E-Moneybags, Big Noose, Troy, and Greenie Born. The drama hit a boiling point when 50 released the track Ghetto Koran, which eventually leaked and found its way into Supreme's hands. In the song, 50 mentioned Supreme by name, and let's just say, that didn't sit well with him at all. Supreme was furious, and this move only deepened the already dangerous tension between them.
You niggas fear Prince and respected Preem. Boy, you slow I'ma break it down illa.
50 Cent claimed that other rappers had talked about Supreme and his shady past before, and Supreme was fine with it. He was even proud that his gang was being mentioned in their songs. But when 50 brought him up in Ghetto Koran, Supreme got mad. Other gangsters from New York saw 50's song as more of a tribute, but Supreme didn't see it that way at all. Around this time, things took an even darker turn. Someone almost took out Supreme at a gas station, and Supreme became convinced that 50 Cent was behind the hit. That's when he decided to take matters into his own hands and eliminate his enemies, with 50 being at the top of his list.
Supreme hired Daryl Homo Baum, also known as Homo, who had been Mike Tyson's bodyguard, to carry out the hit on 50 for a hefty sum. Fortunately, 50 survived the attack, but it took a heavy toll on him, both physically and mentally. If you're wondering who exactly Daryl Homo Baum was, let's rewind and dig into his story. After making quick work of Lou Savarese in the first round, Mike Tyson was gearing up for his highly anticipated fight against Lennox Lewis, a bout that would become the best-selling fight of his career. Now, in boxing, there's something called a promo, which is basically a hyped-up interview to build excitement and interest for the match. Tyson was famous for his wild, intense promos, but this time he started it off by dedicating the fight to a deceased friend, Daryl Hom Baum, also known as Homo. It was a rare emotional moment from Tyson, showing just how much Homo meant to him. I love you with all my heart, Tyson said. Oh God, I'm mad. Daryl, once Mike Tyson's bodyguard and the man who nearly took out 50 Cent, had a storied and notorious past. After spending nearly a decade in prison, Baum emerged and quickly made his way into the chaotic world of street violence and crime. Despite standing at just around 5'8" and walking with a limp, Homo earned a fierce reputation in Brooklyn's Lafayette Gardens projects, not because he was homeless, but for his ability to knock people out with one punch before robbing them. As a teenager, Homo made a name for himself, and it was during Tyson's troubled youth that the two first crossed paths in juvenile detention.
You've always been attracted to the guys that are still in the streets to a certain degree. Do you think that's a fair statement?
You know, attracted to them?
While Tyson became a heavyweight champion, Baum spent most of the 90s in prison for robbery. After being released on New Year's Eve in 1999, Tyson, recognizing the challenges Homo would face reintegrating into society, tried to help out. He gifted Baum a car, some cash, a Rolex, and a job as his bodyguard. However, rumor has it Homo struggled to accept handouts and wanted to make his own money. Soon after his release, he linked up with the Peanut Crew street gang and got involved with Kenneth Supreme McGriff. But by then, at 34 years old, the streets had become a different crawling with younger, hungrier gangsters ready to make their mark. Despite being an older figure in the streets, Daryl quickly made his presence felt. He began pressuring to sell for him, while also allegedly staying at Mike Tyson's mansion in Connecticut, the same mansion that 50 Cent would later purchase from Tyson. By the time the beef between 50 Cent and Kenneth Supreme McGriff escalated, McGriff decided to take drastic action. On May 24, 2000, 50 was leaving his grandmother's house with his son inside and his grandmother in the front yard. As he got into the back seat of a car, another vehicle pulled up and a shooter approached, firing 9 shots from a 9mm. 50 Cent was hit multiple times, in the hand, arm, hip, both legs, chest, and left cheek. One bullet was just inches away from ending his life. Miraculously, after 3 weeks in the hospital and multiple surgeries, 50 Cent survived, which became one of the most legendary survival stories in rap history. 3 years later, in his track Many Men, 50 Cent would reference this event, revealing that Homo was the shooter. However, by that time, Daryl was already dead, not due to 50's doing or involvement.
In the Bible it says, what goes around comes around. Homo shot me, 3 weeks later he got shot.
3 weeks after 50 Cent's shooting, homicide, Homo was but it was a coincidence unrelated to the 50 Cent situation. At the time of his death, Homo was part of the Peanut Crew, run by Ivory Peanut Davis and James Jr. Hamilton. A turf war had been raging between gangs in Brooklyn, triggered by the of Myron Wise Hardy in June 1999 at the Lafayette Gardens housing project. Myron Hardy belonged to the Cash Money Brothers CMB crew, empire controlling the crack trade in Bedford-Stuyvesant's Lafayette Gardens projects. CMB was formed in 1991 and led by Myron and his brother Damian World Hardy, who was incarcerated at the time. In 1998, Damian was thrown out of a Brooklyn roller skating rink by a bouncer named Michael Collins. In retaliation, Collins was by a CMB member on Damian's orders. When Damian learned about his brother Myron's while still in prison, he vowed to exact revenge on the Peanut crew, including Hamo, even though Hamo was in prison when Myron was. The alleged shooter of Myron was Peanut Davis's nephew, Ronell Davis. This ignited a bloody feud between the Peanut crew and CMB. That summer, Damian ordered his enforcer, Aaron eBay Granton, to take out Peanut Davis and his crew. The violence escalated when Dwayne Thor Myers, a CMB member, Peanut crew associate Gerard Kojak Mackins in the same building where Myron Hardy had been. Mackins was suspected of supplying the gun used by Ronell Davis to Myron Hardy, further fueling the deadly conflict. During the court investigation into the violent events surrounding Kenneth Supreme McGriff, Supreme believed that 50 Cent's song Ghetto Koran could potentially incriminate him. The track had referenced Supreme and his criminal history, making him think it could be used as evidence. When law enforcement approached 50 Cent for more details about the information mentioned in the song, 50 nonchalantly responded by telling them to simply listen to the record. In 2003, 50 Cent released the iconic track Many Men Wish Death, where he mentioned Daryl Hamo Baum, indirectly acknowledging him as the shooter responsible for the attempt on his life in 2000.
Shot me 3 weeks later, he got shot down. Now it's clear that I'm here for a real.
As the police dug deeper into Daryl Hamo Baum's death, they uncovered that his stemmed from a grudge against a rival gang. The person responsible was identified as Damon Hardy, the ex-boyfriend of rapper Lil Kim. Hardy's involvement marked a deeper connection to the complex web of street conflicts at the time. In 2003, Irv Gotti, the head of the Inc., formerly Inc., came under investigation for allegedly laundering money for Kenneth Supreme McGriff, further complicating matters for the label. By 2005, Gotti faced charges of money laundering, but the jury ultimately found him innocent of all charges, allowing him to avoid prison. However, McGriff wasn't as fortunate. He was convicted of racketeering and sentenced in New York federal court, sealing his fate and contributing to the downfall of the infamous street ties that influenced much of the hip-hop world during that era. There's no chance in the world there would be a death penalty verdict in this case, U.S. District Court Judge Frederick Block told prosecutors. Prosecutors built a strong case against Kenneth Supreme McGriff using testimony from a hitman, text messages, and video evidence to prove that McGriff had orchestrated a murder for hire, offering $50,000 for the job. With both his and Irv Gotti's assets seized, McGriff could no longer afford a private lawyer and had to rely on a court-appointed attorney. On April 9, 2007, McGriff was sentenced to life in prison. In the aftermath, McGriff claimed that 50 Cent was a snitch, which he believed contributed to his life sentence. 50 Cent, however, denied any involvement in the case. This complex saga of street life, music, and crime was detailed in the 2022 documentary series Supreme Team, directed by Nas, which explored the rise and fall of McGriff and his crew in the context of their influence on the hip-hop world.
The chat in the documentary. I'm not in that.
Yeah.
There's nothing about nothing. All he says is he know me, he know what that was about.
The shooting of 50 Cent had a profound effect on his public image. Prior to the attack, he was mainly recognized for his musical prowess. However, after surviving being shot 9 times, he gained a reputation for his toughness and resilience. This traumatic event became a central part of his persona, and he began to embrace the label of a survivor, using his near-death experience to motivate and inspire others facing their own difficulties. In 2012, during an episode of Oprah's Next Chapter, 50 Cent revisited the site of the shooting. He shared detailed and poignant memories of the incident, reflecting on how it had changed his life and solidified his place as a symbol of perseverance. It doesn't hurt as much as people imagine it hurts because of the adrenaline, but it hurts after, he told Oprah Winfrey of the shooting in 2012.
going through that experience, when you get hurt that bad, either your fear consumes you or you become a bit insensitive. There was a point where I was afraid, and then in the recovery process I got tired of being afraid. The only way to cover those emotions was to be a bit more aggressive, and to be angry about the situation opposed to how I was actually feeling at that point. The shooting of 50 Cent had a profound impact not only on his own life and career, but also on the broader hip-hop community. It served as a harsh reminder of the dangers associated with the trade and the often perilous lifestyle glamorized in rap music. The incident prompted many artists and fans to reconsider the glorification of violence and its real-life repercussions. One person wrote, "'Cause he got hit like I got hit, but he ain't fucking breathing. 50 sent a savage, that line was for that homie right there." Another one added, "The guy who actually shot me is dead. The person who sent him is still alive." In the years following the shooting, 50 Cent's career experienced significant growth. He leveraged his newfound tough guy persona to his advantage, building a vast empire that extended beyond music into movies, fashion, and various business ventures. Curtis Jackson, known professionally as 50 Cent, has diversified his career, achieving remarkable success across multiple industries and establishing himself as a prominent figure in entertainment and entrepreneurship. Absolutely, the shooting did not deter 50 Cent from pursuing his ambitions. In fact, it seems to have fueled his determination and resilience. Today, he's deeply involved in a variety of ventures, including artist and talent management, record production, television and film production, as well as footwear, apparel, and fragrances. His ability to expand into so many different areas highlights his entrepreneurial spirit and how he has turned a life-altering event into a catalyst for even greater success.